Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the WOODBOIS Limited AGM Proceedings and Investor Presentation. Throughout this presentation, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Questions can be submitted, however, they will be reviewed post the event, and publication of responses will be available on the Investor Meet Company website where appropriate to do so. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. I'd now like to hand you over to John Nelson, Chair of the AGM. John, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 11 a.m. and a quorum is present, either in person or online, and therefore I'd like to propose opening the 2021 Annual General Meeting of WOODBOIS Limited. I am the Chairman of the meeting. In light of the evolving COVID-19 restrictions in Guernsey, shareholders' attendance in person was unlikely, and the board strongly encouraged all shareholders to appoint the Chairman of the meeting as a proxy. Shareholders have been given the opportunity to follow the proceedings online through the Investor Meet Company platform. Following the formal proceedings of the meeting, I will hand over to Paul Dolan, Chair and CEO, to provide a short presentation and to answer questions submitted either pre-event or during the proceedings via this platform. I propose taking the notice of this AGM and matters convening the meeting as read. The proxy results be read out after each resolution is proposed and seconded. This complies with the UK Corporate Governance Code. Sadly, the platform does not enable us to differentiate between shareholders and non-holders, so the proposer and seconder of each resolution will be company officers. I would note that the actual votes cast by proxy for all resolutions were in favour, with not less than 99% voting in favour for each resolution. I now proceed with the resolutions. The first resolution is to receive and adopt the Director's Report, the Audited Statement of Accounts and Auditor's Report for the year ended 31 December 2020. I now formally propose this resolution and ask Nick Marion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried as an ordinary resolution. I will now give you the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 1,114,013,696 votes, representing 99.258%, against 8,333,333 votes, representing 0.742%. There's no directions and no abstentions. The second resolution is to re-elect Hadi Gussain as a director of the company. I now formally propose this resolution and will ask Nick Marion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried as an ordinary resolution. I will now give the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 1,122,289,017 votes, representing 99.995%, against 58,012 votes, representing 0.005%. Again, no directions and no abstentions. The third resolution is to re-elect Henry Turkin as a director of the company. I now formally propose the resolution as an ordinary resolution and would ask Nick Marion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried as an ordinary resolution. I will now give you the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 1,113,930,684, representing 99.25%, against 8,416,345, representing 0.75%. No directions and no abstentions. The fourth resolution is to reappoint PKF Littlejohn LLP as auditors of the company. And I formally propose the resolution as an ordinary resolution and would ask Nick Marion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried as an ordinary resolution. I will now give the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 1,113,978,257, representing 99.254%, against 8,368,772, representing 0.746%. No directions and no abstentions. The fifth resolution is to authorise the directors to determine the auditor's remuneration. I now formally propose the resolution as an ordinary resolution and would ask Nick Merrion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried as an ordinary resolution. I will now give the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 122,311,568, representing 99.997%. Against, 35,461, representing 0.003%. No directions and no abstentions. The sixth resolution is to grant the directors of the company authority under Article 8 of the company's Articles of Incorporation to allot relevant securities. I now formally propose the resolution as an ordinary resolution and would ask Nick Merrion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I will now give you the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 1,122,109,792, representing 99.979%. Against, 237,237, representing 0.021%. No directions, no abstentions. The seventh resolution is the special resolution and is to approve this application of preemptive rights, which is to say to allow shares to be allotted for cash otherwise than to existing shareholders in proportion to their existing holdings to the extent set out in the notice of the meeting. I now formally propose the resolution as a special resolution and would ask Nick Merrion to second the resolution.
I second the resolution.
Thank you. I declare the resolution carried as a special resolution. I now give the proxy count on this resolution. In favour, 1,122,005,231, representing 99.97%. Against, 341,798, representing 0.03%. No directions and no abstentions. This concludes the formal business of the annual general meeting of WOODBOIS Limited. I would now like to hand over to Paul Dolan, Chair and CEO, who will make a short presentation and answer questions.
Thanks, John, for chairing, and thank you everybody for joining this morning. I've decided to make this presentation, which is about our carbon division, because the majority of pre-submitted questions that we received were really about what we're doing in the carbon space, asking us to talk about it, and really asking why the company sees this particular area as an exciting opportunity. So hopefully, by taking you through these slides, you'll get a greater understanding of what we want to do and why we want to do it, and the opportunity that we see ahead of us. So look, it's clear that there's a climate emergency, and the carbon market's been going for probably 25 years, but not in the form that it's in today. I think there's very clear understanding, around the world, that we're not on track to meet the Paris Agreement goals, which would require global warming to remain below 2 degrees from pre-industrial revolution times. And climate scientists have made it clear that a deep transformation is going to be required if we're going to achieve the climate goals that have been set. And it's also widely recognised that the carbon credit markets are going to play a role in this. What's also clear is that tropical forests play a critical role in sequestering and storing carbon. And forest preservation and reforestation are currently the most effective ways, as you'll see as we go through the slides, of actually taking carbon out of the atmosphere. Now, amongst construction materials, and that's our existing business. Clearly, timber has the most significant potential for the storage of carbon, unlike concrete and steel. So we feel that timber as a commodity is likely to become an increasingly valuable and inflation-proofed asset class, not just because of increased demand for construction materials, but also for its value as a means of sequestering and storing carbon. As you're probably aware, WOODBOIS sustainably manages around 1 million acres of forest currently, and entering the carbon credit market through large-scale afforestation and reforestation schemes, I think makes perfect sense, because it also allows us to continue to grow our valuable underlying asset base. So through this carbon division and using limited cash, we believe we can add a really valuable long-term call option on carbon pricing to our existing sustainable cash flow generative inflation-proof business. So this is a look at the carbon market as it is today. In the top left-hand corner, you see 272 billion, which is was last year's turnover in the ETS market, mainly in Europe and in California. So this is a market that's trading more than $1 billion a day. Now we're looking to enter the voluntary carbon market, which is something that's been championed by Mark Carney, who's set up has been mandated by the UN to set up a task force to develop the voluntary carbon market, and by 2030 we expect the demand for voluntary credits to increase by 20 times. The average industry price for carbon per ton by 2030 is $91, and that's 12 times the average price that was paid in 2019 for voluntary credits. So clearly, in terms of pricing, there's the potential for really enormous price increases. Why do we think that's going to happen? Well, more than 1,600 companies representing more than $11 trillion of sales have announced their intention to get to net zero emissions by 2050. So how are they going to do that? One of the ways that they're going to have to do that is to purchase carbon credits. We've looked at just 10 companies that between them have budgeted $5 billion for nature-based solutions. Clearly, that's something that we can provide. And in terms of the economics, how the economics look for us if we were providing such a solution. Well, if we were to reforest a 20,000 hectare site, for example, that would sequester 25 tons of CO2 per hectare per year, generating 500,000 credits. Now, if we just take $20 as a price for those credits, it's an arbitrary price, but as you'll see as we go through the presentation, we think that's actually a very low price looking at future forecasts. That would provide a $10 million annual revenue stream for 30 or 40 years of that project. Now, of course, that wouldn't all come to WOODBOIS. That would be divided between the financial backers of the project, because we're unlikely to use our own balance sheet to do this, to fund this, and of course the country that we did the project in, and we intend to do multiple projects. These are some of the companies that I'm sure you'll recognise that have made the types of commitments that I just referenced. And between them, I think there's several $1 billion of commitments to participate in the voluntary carbon market for nature-based solutions. What's going on in the market at the moment? We see a huge number of consultants around the space, and we clearly seen significant demand growing to purchase these carbon credits, particularly if people can buy them at what they would consider to be cheap prices. But we're also seeing M&A in the space already. So the 3 deals that we've highlighted here have all happened already this year. In the first 5 months of 2021, and you can see it's not surprising to see who the acquirers are, but the companies that are getting acquired. So, for example, Finite Carbon that were acquired by BP 2 months ago. Finite Carbon's business model was in the US to pay people that have forest to not cut trees in their forest. So it's just one of the ways that people make money in this space. So how is there's projection here on the graph that you see, the projected growth according to McKinsey of the voluntary carbon market, and you see that they're expecting by 2030 for there to be demand to offset 2 billion tons of CO2. We actually think that's incredibly low. If you think that, for the last couple of years, we've been emitting 51 billion tons into the atmosphere every year across the planet. Demand for 2 billion tons, just 4% of that seems like a pretty low number in another 8 or 9 years' time. So actually, the market, some people feel could grow much faster and much larger than that. The project that I mentioned on the first or second slide would sequester just 2 million tons per year, so just 0.1% of what's going to be required according to McKinsey by 2030. So you can see there's huge room for this market to grow. What are the price forecasts from experts in this space? Again, you'll recognise, I'm sure, a lot of the companies and organisations at the bottom of this chart, and this is where we draw this average of $91 per tonne price expectation by the end of this decade. When you consider that Sweden's already imposing a tax of $170 per tonne on emissions, again, you could conclude that actually $91 per tonne is pretty conservative. For our own model, we priced it a deep discount to this, and we're just pricing in $50 per tonne. So why reforestation? And why we back to why we're so interested in this space now. Clearly, we're in the forestry sector, and we have boots on the ground in Africa, and we have infrastructure and organisation in place already. But if you look across where it says cost on the left hand side, and then you look across all of these different ways to sequester carbon that are warming up and everybody's interested in and must remain interested in now, you can see that there's nothing that compares to growing a tree in terms of the efficiency and the price at which you can do it at, the cost that you can do it at. Nothing compares to anything close to reforestation. Now, of course, we can't reforest the whole planet, and new forest projects could probably sequester 25% of the CO2 that's required to keep temperature rises to 2% to 2 degrees or lower. Other technologies are going to be required, and I'm sure the cost price that you see for direct air capture and ocean fertilization and all of these things that we're already reading about in our newspapers, we're going to continue to read about this and learn about this, and there's no doubt that there's going to be huge investment into these spaces. It's unlikely, however, that anything is ever going to come as close on a cost basis to being as efficient as a tree in terms of being able to capture CO2. And even if it was, the worst thing that could happen for us is that we get left with a growing forest, which, as we know, is a tremendous store of value. What does a project look like? Well, once you kick off the project, of course, you've got to secure your plot, and you've got to plant it. And for us, we want to use indigenous species wherever we work. You have to go to a verification agency to get the project validated. As the trees grow, these agencies come in. Vera, some of you may be aware of, Gold Standard. There are probably 6 or 7 different agencies at the moment. One of the things that Mark Carney has been charged with is to try and create a common standard so that people can compare voluntary credits, like for like. So we expect some standardization to take place between those agencies. A little bit similar to the way you'd see S&P and Moody's rate different bonds in the bond market. Then credits are issued on an annual basis after the project has been verified, and of course there are ways to there are various ways to measure the amount of carbon that's been sequestered from the forest as it grows. Then the project starts to generate revenue, and you can sell those credits to corporates and other organisations that want to buy the credits, and of course you can actually pre-sell these as well, which we would intend to do to fund projects. And then, of course, you have the cycle of growing the trees and creating these carbon sinks. And as we'll come on to, you'll see, we happen to be incredibly fortunate in that, we operate on the equator in Gabon. We have 3 meters of rainfall a year and sunshine pretty much every day. There's almost nowhere on the planet that trees will grow faster and sequester more carbon. So look, we're in a unique industry position in that we've been in the sector in Gabon for more than 20 years. We've proven an ability to build high quality teams and to execute complex operations on the ground, to manage the logistics, etc. We intend to engage corporate partners by offering the forward sale of high quality carbon credits. And when I say high quality, I talked about indigenous trees, but there needs to be additionality to these projects. These projects need to benefit the people of the geographies in which we're working. Often these are remote places. There aren't many job opportunities. Particularly, there aren't many job opportunities for women. And we will be able to create jobs, whether it's working in the nurseries or collecting seeds, or all sorts of different jobs around the forest for both men and women, to support the communities that we work with. Technology is incredibly important. I mentioned that there are different ways to measure and monitor the projects. There's something called LiDAR that's available now, and in the same way as we work right now, we try to be very transparent, with the market, with all of our stakeholders, with everything that we do. I think this will really help us, be transparent and make sure the ratings agencies or the standards agencies can have a very clear view of how effective our forests and our different parcels of forest are being as they grow. And we intend to work very closely with those carbon standards agencies and really be a leader in this field. As I said earlier, there's a big ecosystem of consultants, looking for projects in this space, and a wall of money that wants to invest. But what we see is very few people actually doing, really doing on the ground, and of course that's something that we're very well versed in. Why we're unique? Well, really, we have this operational expertise in Africa, but also through my own background and experience and other people within the firm, we also have a very deep knowledge of global financial markets and structuring deals. And I feel that puts us in a really unique position versus competition to link reforestation solutions and nature-based solutions to the creation of carbon credits and the distribution of those credits globally. I mentioned Gabon and the fact that we're very fortunate to work on the equator in such an incredible country that is almost 90% forest cover, at the moment, and has an incredibly small population. The land mass is bigger than the UK, and the population is only 2 million people. So we're not in competition with people for the land. It's the government is clearly fully aligned with these types of projects. It's through the appointment of Professor Lee White as the Minister of Forestry, he's a well-known environmentalist and has been managing the national parks in Gabon for more than 20 years. They've really shown leadership in Gabon amongst the African countries, and an appreciation for the environment, and addressing deforestation, investing in green industries, and of course engaging with sustainability programs. COP26 in Glasgow in October. Please do look out for Mr. Gahuma, who will be serving as the chairman of the African Group of Negotiators for climate change at COP26. Communities, clearly, it's incredibly important that we support the communities, we harness that support, and of course they have tremendous knowledge of their local geography, and we have close relationships with these communities because we've been working with them and providing employment to them for more than 20 years. The Gabon Green Initiative, again, back to kind of alignment with the government, but it's a serious initiative that's focused on accelerating the transition away from an extractive-based economy towards a sustainable future. And there was news actually even this morning. There's a BBC clip that you could listen to talking about Gabon receiving the first round of funding from Norway as part of a 10-year deal to protect their forests. So back to why WOODBOIS wants to do this. Well, it really is an obvious add-on actually to existing operations. I've been at the company now 5 years. And this is something that I looked at probably a year after joining. So 4 years ago, it was something that we did a lot of research on and built models for, and try to figure out if it was something that we could get involved with. And at that time, there just wasn't, I think, the global understanding, should I say, or the mainstream support and understanding for what needs to be done about climate change. It just wasn't as high on the agenda, and certainly carbon prices weren't where they are today. The ETS market traded through $60 a couple of weeks ago. I think that we were looking at prices of below $10 at that time, and it just didn't make economic sense. But it really does today, and I think this is absolutely going to be one of the big stories, not just of this decade, but of decades to come. So it's an obvious thing for us to do. We feel we can be a really highly reputable climate change solution provider for global corporates, a trusted partner for African governments. It's incredibly important, and that we can provide long-term environmental and social benefits. We feel it further enhances our credentials as a best-in-class ESG investment, because we'd be making measurable contribution and significant contribution to combating climate change through these large-scale reforestation projects. It would clearly increase our existing long-term sustainable income stream. So there's a very, very strong commercial reason for what we're doing. And in terms of diversification, we feel this model is replicable across multiple African countries. As I mentioned at the start, we'd look to forward sell carbon credits to corporate partners so that we don't have the working capital burden. And if you look at the 20,000 hectares that I mentioned, that would be a $40 to $50 million investment to over 10 years to run that project. And for our shareholders, for everyone on this call, I don't see another long-term call option on carbon pricing in public markets. So again, that's something that's really, really unique to us. So,
Paul,
yes, Paul.
So, Paul, thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to remind attendees that the recording of the presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard on the Investor Meet Company platform. I'd also like to remind you that your feedback is important to the company, and immediately after the presentation has ended, you'll be redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. Paul, as I say, thank you very much for the presentation. Attendees were given the opportunity to pre-submit questions ahead of today's meeting, of which we'll now address. Any further question received today will be reviewed by the company, and post today's presentation, responses will be published on the Investor Meet Company platform where appropriate to do so. If I may, Paul, I'll just read out the first question, and we'll go through those questions that we received. The first one reads as follows: please, can you tell us more about the launch of the carbon sequestration/trading division and why the company sees this particular area as an exciting opportunity?
I think, Paul, maybe we skip, because hopefully the presentation has covered that question off. So maybe we skip on to the next one.
Absolutely, no problem at all. Next question reads as follows: with so much growth and expansion planned, how will the board be addressing the lack of senior executives to oversee a competent execution of the company's strategy? Where does the key man risk lie? Okay, so we've made several senior appointments in the last 6 months after the restructuring last year, including some really key people in Gabon. Olivier Normand, for instance, is managing all of our production facilities there now. And the big uptick in production numbers that we announced at the end of Q1, I think really highlighted the impact that Olivier's had. For our FSC certification, clearly something that's very important to us, we've hired Richard Fusini, who's incredibly highly qualified and experienced in this field. He's currently working towards OLB certification for us as an interim step towards FSC certification. And then on the carbon trading side, we also made a really senior hire, Michael Floyd, to spearhead that important new division. And
And on top of that, we stated in our annual report that we'd hire further non-exec directors, and that we'd split my current role of chair and CEO in due course. But this really is a good question, because we clearly have aggressive growth and expansion plans and ambitions. And I think, like any growth company, we're always looking to strengthen the team. And we're really conscious of the need to provide appropriate incentives to attract the highest caliber of talent that we possibly can to the team. I think we probably have a higher emphasis on technology than other companies in this sector. And that's for a bunch of reasons. Whether that's for eking out production improvements, or optimizing our trading flows, or in the future measuring carbon sequestration. I think this tech-led approach will be really important to our growth, and it's definitely an area in which we'll look to continue to strengthen. We'll continue to look to strengthen.
Fantastic, thank you, Paul. The next question we have here reads as follows: with the shortages of timber products in the UK construction market, are you looking to capitalise on this opportunity? And if so, which routes to market are being explored?
Okay, so we typically supply hardwoods, but the UK hardwood imports are less than 10% of total timber imports into the UK. The UK is much more of a softwood market. That said, we pride ourselves on being nimble and opportunistic, but our focus, I guess, when we're looking to open new markets, is probably likely to be more long-term than short-term driven, and we'd absolutely need to have some kind of competitive advantage. Now, if that opportunity opens in the UK to us, it would be compared, obviously, to everything else that we have on the table at that time, and we'd review it as such.
Thank you. Next question we have: is there any reason why the share price dropped 33% just in the past 1 month? Is there negative news which we're not aware of?
Well, firstly, we're fully aware of our disclosure obligations, and we'll release our update for the first half of 2021 in the second week of July, which is in line with our policy of providing quarterly updates. And secondly, while we don't typically comment on share price movements, I think it's worth noting that we made a placing at 2p in August last year as part of the restructuring, and that the share price is currently obviously more than 100% above that level, and the share price is back to where it was at the end of January, which I think is roughly in line with the performance of the FTSE 100 AIM index. And then thirdly, I guess, really, I should thank Lombard Odier and Myton and all of our shareholders for their support for our growth and for our development plans.
Thank you, Paul. Is WOODBOIS still being impacted by constraints in the freight shipping industry? If so, how much impact is it having, and when does the company expect these constraints to ease?
Yeah, we've talked about this previously, and like any export company, clearly we're impacted from the point of view of actually getting hold of containers and then getting slots on ships. That's every export company in the world is feeling that to some degree right now, and has done probably for the last 9 months. Now there's clearly very high demand for containers globally, and you've got low port productivity currently, particularly in China. I think logic dictates that eventually everything finds equilibrium. I'm sure Maersk are regretting the fact that they when COVID hit, they scrapped a lot of their older fleet last year, and that's it's probably added to this issue. But it's we expect things to recover and find equilibrium, but it's really not for me to hazard a guess as to exactly when that might be. Particularly since it seems that the pandemic hasn't completely finished with us yet.
Paul, thank you. The last question we have here is: timber prices hit an all-time high in the US last month. Does the company expect demand to remain at this level? If so, will this have a positive impact on revenue going forward?
Okay, I get asked this question quite a lot. I think probably because of the number of column inches in the FT and other publications about what's happened in the US timber sector this year. And I think the price that's been referred to in the question is probably the CME softwood lumber futures in the US, which had an absolutely enormous spike that was driven by, I think, sawmills misjudging the demand from people who were making home improvements during lockdown, as well as tariffs that were imposed by the US on Canadian timber. Now, that price has retraced quite a bit this month, but the CME futures have still doubled year on year. Now, our hardwood product clearly has some correlation because it's also used in construction. New home supply in the US and the UK clearly hasn't been keeping pace with demand probably for decades, and that's a similar story in many parts of the world. Not to mention Africa, where you're going to see demand for to house an additional billion people over the next 25 to 30 years. They're all going to need homes. So we feel that the growth in demand for our products is very firmly underpinned, and clearly that should also be good for our margins.
Fantastic, Paul. Thank you very much indeed for addressing those questions. That does conclude the Q&A session there. Perhaps I could just ask you for a few final words before we redirect attendees to give you some feedback.
Look, thank you, Paul, for hosting on your platform again. It's the second time we've used it, and it's of course we'd like to be able to meet everybody in person, and in future hopefully we will. But I think your platform's given a fantastic medium for us to connect with shareholders. So thank you for that. Thank you everyone for attending, for sending the questions, and for really for such overwhelming support for the resolutions, which is great to see. I think there's really a lot to look forward to from the company in the next 6 months and in the years ahead. We're excited about the journey that we're going on, and really look forward to providing further updates in due course.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank the board of WOODBOIS Limited for the updating attendees today. Could I please ask attendees not to close this session? You'll be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments and will be greatly appreciated by the management team. On behalf of the management team of WOODBOIS Limited, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That concludes today's session.